Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We're going to have a great show for you today. That debate. Hey, what is it? Hashtag dem debate. Hashtag dem debate. And it was a darn debate, wasn't it? Anyhow, folks, we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to have the latter part of the show taken over by Rose Williams, who tells her story in dealing her dealings, her victimization by the evil private health insurance company via control of her own health care. Doctors having to have new masters, the health industrial complex. We're going to talk about all of that. But anyhow, folks, what you thought about that debate? What do you think about the debate? I tell you, it was one of the most rigged debates I've seen. But what was so good is when you have truth on your side, when you are in the right, when you are showing that others are nothing more than tools to a plutocracy, there's nothing that they can throw on you that will stick. Nothing. So, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, even when Bernie talked about, Castro was an evil man, yes, but, education went up because, they get free education there, and the bot audience screamed. But, before we get into anything, what's the program is going to be? The title of the program is Dem Debate Analysis, the analysis of the democratic debate. Subtitle of the show is, or rather, and secondly, a victim of evil private health insurance speaks. That's the title of our show today. What is the subtitle of our show? Rose Williams, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard, my friend. What's the subtitle of the show? The subtitle of the show is The Debate in South Carolina Was an Orchestrated Hit Job on Progressives That Backfired. A hit on progressives that backfired. I know a lot of people don't go into the intricacies, so they don't really see that. They just saw a fear fest of people attacking Bernie Sanders and holding back some on Elizabeth Warren because, they were hoping that Elizabeth Warren would go on the attack on Bernie Sanders, but instead, Elizabeth Warren let El Señor Bloomberg have it. That woman is, when she hit Bloomberg, she hits him where it hurts and where people can understand. So the debate in South Carolina was an orchestrated hit jobs on progressives that backfired. Krystal Ball exposed it well. And secondly, Rose Williams, a victim of an evil private health insurance system, speaks with us as well. Rose Williams' experience makes it clear private health insurance is evil and Medicare for all is the only solution. Rose went from listening to what she was told to taking her own health care into her hands as best that the system allowed. It has made her a proponent and strong advocate of Medicare for all. I have a typo in there. Her experience should scare every woman. Hell, it should scare every American. Again, I state, I reiterate, private health insurance is evil by design. There is no two ways to look at this. Their profits depend on denying you service or milking you for whatever they can get out of you. That's an evil enterprise. That is legal thievery. Legal thievery. The entire healthcare industrial complex is first based on money, with humanity second. Rose Williams' story makes it quite evident. But we have stories. We told you last week about the story about the woman that I met in Nevada while we were canvassing for Bernie Sanders, where her daughter died. Her daughter died. When we talk about our health industrial complex killing people, when we talk about the healthcare system that is sanctioned by many of our politicians, both Democrat and Republican alike, kills. That's what I mean. When they talk about, we can just have a public option, that also will kill. You know why? Because what they will do is they will shrink its possibilities. Okay? So people, I want you guys to listen. I want you guys to listen to what we are going to be talking about. I want you to realize that what we are saying today, is of utmost importance to us all. Anyhow, the first thing I want to do is to show you a Freudian slip by El Señor Bloomberg. Because as you know, Democrats won a whole lot of seats in 2018. And yes, Bloomberg spent $100 million to help those Democrats get elected. Well, why would a guy like Bloomberg, who later on, as Elizabeth Warren will show how she exposed it, why would he be so interested in hiring or getting all these Democrats elected? There's a reason. There's a reason. We'll go into that a little bit later. But listen to this Freudian slip, me brothers and me sisters. Check this out. Billionaire Bloomberg spoke. He wanted everybody to know that, yes, he got a whole lot of Democrats elected after he was accused of electing a lot of Republicans. So a lot of the 40 new Democrats that turned the House around was paid for by Bloomberg. And guess what he said? In effect, he had a Freudian slip. I want you to check this out. I went ahead and enhanced it by cutting that little piece out where he said he bought them. Check this out.
20 Democrats, 21 of those were people that I spent $100 million to help elect. All of the new Democrats that came in, put Nancy Pelosi in charge, and gave the Congress the ability to control this president. I got that. 20 Democrats, 21 of those were people that I spent.
Now he slipped and said, I bought, and then he said, I did it. But what I wanted you to see is how billionaires think about their money. They can buy anything. They buy politicians, and he wants to buy the election. We know that he's spending money to do things online by paying people to promote that he is a good guy. I bought it. He bought politicians just like he's buying the politicians who are supporting him now. Was that wonderful or what? We caught him. I mean, he's there. He's getting comfortable. And then he says it. I bought those 40 Democrats. I am their masters. They will do what I need them to do. Understand it. Why did he buy Democrats? Because the Republicans already abide by the plutocratic field. But they're some of them are a bit too unruly. So you buy Democrats to make bipartisan policy that are plutocratically driven. You see? You see what I'm talking about, folks? This is what we are up against. Anyhow, something wonderful happened to Bloomberg, though. You know, Bloomberg tries to come across as, oh, Mr. Democrat who wants to be the Democratic president of the United States. Well, here's what happened. Elizabeth Warren really clocked him on that one. This is what she did. And did she do it the right way? Check this out. Once again, we had a rowdy debate, but you know what? I think the person who landed the most effective punch again in this debate was Elizabeth Warren, just like she did in the last debate, and it was against El Señor Bloomberg. And you know what? I think whoever wins, I think what she is doing is going to show some effectiveness seldom seen going forward. But anyhow, check this out.
And you know who's going to be in Charleston later this week is Donald Trump. He's going to be here to raise money for his buddy, Senator Lindsey Graham. Who funded Lindsey Graham's campaign for re-election last time? It was Mayor Bloomberg. And that's not the only right-wing senator that Mayor Bloomberg has funded. In 2016, He dumped $12 million into the Pennsylvania Senate race to help reelect an anti-choice right-wing Republican senator. And I just want to say, the woman challenger was terrific. She lost by a single point. In 2012, he scooped in to try to defend another Republican senator against a woman challenger. That was me. It didn't work, but he tried hard. I don't care how much money Mayor Bloomberg has. The core of the Democratic Party will never trust him. He has not earned their trust. I will. And the fact that he cannot earn the trust of the core of the Democratic Party means he is the riskiest candidate standing on this stage.
All right, Senator.
Now, what I found interesting, and not only interesting, but I found it dignified, is that Elizabeth Warren, knowing how close she is in policies with Bernie Sanders, kept most of her attack on Bloomberg. She hit Bernie Sanders, I think, a very, very sort of a tepid hit, but she really went at it for Bloomberg. And I think, in effect, it seems to me that she is sacrificing values, meaning that Bloomberg simply must not be the Democratic nominee at her own expense. And that is commendable. That is commendable. And I want folks to understand what I just said. I think Elizabeth Warren, yes, she wants to be the president. Yes, she wants to win. But more importantly, she does not want Bloomberg to become the representative of the Democratic Party. And that is understandable why. Because at that point, we have from a right-wing plutocratic government to a center right plutocratic government. I mean, if you doubt that, remember when they said, one of the things about Elizabeth Warren has a thing that she likes to call accountable capitalism. And in her accountable capitalism, she wants employees on the board of directors, because after all, they are stakeholders as well. They make the product. They're the ones who make these plutocrats the money that they have. So she wants them on there as well. And Bloomberg simply came out during the last debate and said, absolutely not. Makes no sense. We are the masters. You are the peons. You are the new antiseptic slaves. How dare you want a position on our table, the table of the smarts? Of course, the real smarts is down with the people, the engineers, the people who design the products, the people who create the services and so forth. But they don't see it that way, right? They don't. They absolutely don't. So anyhow, that's what he said. But here's the deal. Did you notice how rowdy those folks were out there? They were more rowdy than usual. And somehow they seemed a bit more anti-Bernie and anti-Elizabeth than one would expect. And, a tweet went out by one of the MSNBC's younger reporters, and Krystal Ball picked it up, and she did a little piece on that. I want you to listen to it because I think she hits the nail on the head. Check this out.
Very early in the debate last night, it became clear that something was quite off. The thing I could not have anticipated was the bizarre response of the audience. They booed Bernie for going after billionaires. They wildly cheered terrible answers from Bloomberg. Actually, they pretty much booed every progressive thing that was said.
That Cuba made progress on education. Yes, I think, really, Mayor Bloomberg has a solid and strong and enthusiastic base of support. Problem is, they're all billionaires. Now,
it was so blatantly over-the-top weird that journalists immediately started asking questions. Here's MSNBC's Steve Kornacki wondering in the very early minutes of this debate, what the hell exactly is going on here? Well, it didn't take long to get the answer. Here we go. Want a guaranteed seat at the Democratic debate in Charleston? It'll cost a lot of cash. The article quotes voters Emily Kiley and Peter Davis, both Bernie Sanders supporters, saying that they searched high and low for tickets. The only way to get those tickets was to shell out literally thousands of dollars to the party to become a sponsor The so-called party of the people only lets people in the room who have the financial means or the connections to casually cough up several thousands of dollars. What a complete disgrace. It was a room full of rich people for whom Bernie is an existential threat to their personal class interests. Not only that, the entire donor class and Democratic establishment despises Bernie because they know he will never be beholden to them. Remember this moment with the New York Times?
Look, I don't tolerate bullshit terribly well. And I come from a different background than a lot of other people who run the country. I'm not good at backslapping. I'm not good at pleasantries. If you have your birthday, I'm not going to call you up to congratulate you, say you love me and you write nice things about me. That's not what I do. Never have. And I take that as a little bit of a criticism, self-criticism. I've been amazed at how many people respond to, happy birthday. Oh, Bernie, thanks so much for calling. It works. It's just not my style.
So much of the animus towards Bernie comes from this exact thing, basically. He refuses to coddle the ruling class, and it completely enrages them. The Democratic Party is supposed to be against money in politics. It's supposed to be about the grassroots people power, supposed to believe that money isn't speech. Yet they never, ever, even for 1 second, even for one debate night, live those values. They're always for sale to the highest bidder, even down to something so small on the one hand, but so essential to our democracy as a debate audience. And then, in the commercial breaks, as if that's not enough, what do we get? A freaking Bloomberg ad, a bunch of pharma and anti-Medicare for all ads. Brendan James out on Twitter assures us that a presidential debate where the audience is rigged for one candidate, whose face and voice then also appear in patriotic tones during commercial breaks, is not oligarchy, which only happens in Russia. Oh, good. I feel so much better now. Very early in the debate last night.
Now, she hits the nail on the head. She hits the nail on the head. But anyhow, it is time for us to get to the main attraction, and that is with Rose Williams as she tells her story about the evil health insurance companies and the tribulations that she had to go through. Guys, check this out. This is well worth the time. Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Berto Willis, your host. I am honored today to be with Rose Williams, a lecturer at Binghamton University and a Medicare for All advocate, and as well a supporter of politics done right. Rose Williams, thank you so kindly for spending this time with us. We have a whole lot to talk about.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, let me tell you, your story is going to be one of the myriad of stories that's going to make a difference to our body politic, because Americans need to understand that what's going on here affects us all. And
Yes.
you have enough stories to tell Americans that many Americans themselves have lived it. But we have a problem, Rose. We have a problem. Americans
Big
love
problem.
to suffer in silence. And what we
Yes.
want to do is bring that out into the open. So I'm going to give the floor to you and ask you, tell me what insurance companies have done to you.
Okay, well, I think I'll start with one sort of anecdote. When my youngest son, who just had a birthday Monday, was born, I had to have a C-section. Okay, and we put in all the paperwork, and I copied all the paperwork so I could make sure and verify that everything was correct. And I put it in, and a couple of weeks later, we get a letter in the mail saying that our claim was rejected, that the patient was not eligible for a C-section. I was like, what? So I called the insurance company and I said, what's going on? You know, I have this paper here. It says I'm not eligible. What do you mean? And so they tried to look it up and they said, we have no record of anything being sent to us. You know, you're mistaken. And I said, I have this sheet right here. Okay. And they said, well, please resubmit it. So I resubmitted it. Well, I don't want to make I want to make a long story short. This went on for over 2 years.
Wow.
Over 2 years. And they kept on telling me that my insurance, the letter was, it was rejected, not eligible. And then I would call them and they would say, well, you just didn't submit the forms. And I had copies, I sent it registered, all kinds of things. Well, finally, I called, and I'm getting desperate at this point. And I get on the phone with someone, and they said, "Well, I'm looking at this." And I said, "Please, everyone doesn't really want to follow this up. Will you please look up this number, find it, because everyone keeps on saying it was not filed. I filed it a million times." And so instead of just brushing me off, this kind woman looked up the number, right? And she said the problem was that for some reason someone had filed it. Like the paperwork I submitted was correct. Someone had filed it under my husband.
Huh.
And guess what? He's not eligible for a C-section.
Right.
Now, this went on for over 2 years. And I mean, you can't tell me that somebody in 2 years did not notice, or I mean, if that was the case, why didn't they come back at us and say, "Hey, this is fraud"?
And
What?
the question is, Rose, isn't
Yeah.
the private system supposed to be more efficient?
Oh, yeah, right. And it isn't. I mean, this whole business about private versus public, I work at a state university. And if you see the folks that I work with and how hard we work and how we care for our students and how we spend so much time trying to keep up with current situations and spend all kinds of time, extra time that, we're not getting directly paid for, reading and working to hone our skills. Anyone who says that, oh, this only happens in the private sector, it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. But there was a period of time there, and it just seems like every time we turned around, we had more and more trouble with insurance. It was hilarious. Well, not really, because we were exhausted, right? We had 2 babies at home, and my younger son tended to get sick a lot. He had a lot of problems. We would send in forms, and we would pay something, and then we get forms back months later saying that we owed this money, and we were getting double billed constantly. And then that takes time to follow it all up. And my own opinion was just that in some cases they were doing this on purpose, because who has the time to follow it up? And in other cases, we had an insurance plan where, they negotiated with the doctors, they negotiated with the hospitals. So there was, if you had this insurance, it was this cost, right? And we would get a letter saying, well, your insurance only pays this much and you owe this, okay? In cases where it was negotiated. And we would check it out. We would call the hospital or the doctor, and we'd say, what's going on here? And they would say, oh, they can't ask you for that money because you have this negotiated insurance. And they would just keep on sending bills, and then they would send you to collection agency. And I mean, it's invalid. It was totally invalid. So that went on for quite some time. I'll give you another example before I get into, I suppose, the most serious example. I had to have, actually a couple of little examples. I had arthroscopy on a knee, and I went for physical therapy. And every time I went, I paid my copay. There was one time that the woman who I had to give the payment to, I think she was out sick or something. And I remember at the very end of all this, I couldn't remember whether I remembered to pay double the next time or not. And so a month or so later, I get this bill for $650.
Wow.
And what is this for? Well, you didn't pay your copays. I said, well, I might have missed one, but I paid all the rest. And we had to go through all this nonsense to prove that, in fact, all of them, and there was one I was missing. All right. So when they finally did all the research and we got everything straight, but this took, days and hours on the telephone, and it's so wasteful. And time is money.
Right.
Time
Well, they expect a lot of people to just throw their hands up and say, let me just go ahead and pay it. And that's how, and that's what they do.
And
but,
we do it so many times. I will tell you,
Right.
there were so many times where we just did it because we didn't have the time. We had sick kids. We had other things going on. Another thing that happened is I had surgery on my shoulder. I had a bone spur. And during the surgery, apparently, well, this is what I found out later. Apparently, they sliced through my vocal cord when they intubated me.
Wow.
Yeah. And when I woke up, this is the first time I had surgery where my throat hurt worse than where I had the
Right,
surgery.
right.
And I'm telling them there's something very wrong here. Very wrong. I could hardly speak, and my voice, the tones were going all over the place, and it was just crazy. And they said, "Oh, well, this happens, right? And then you'll get better in a couple of weeks. Just drink water." And then in a couple of weeks, it wasn't any better, if not worse. And I'm a lecturer. I'm trying to
Right.
lecture, and my voice is going all over the place, from a croak to a high pitch to, I mean, it was horrible. And so I went to a doctor, and it was like, they deign to have somebody like an ear, nose, throat look at you. And he would only look at certain things. He says, well, it's just probably that after the surgery it was painful and you held your throat a certain way. So I'm going to suggest that you go for vocal therapy. And so they sent me to vocal therapy, and then they said, well, we're not going to cover it though. Okay, we're not going to cover any of this.
Really?
Yeah, and it was like $400 to $600, and of course it didn't do anything because that wasn't the problem.
Right.
And so finally, I'm getting really perturbed about this, and it's affecting my ability to communicate. And I said, look, this is crazy. There is something wrong. I don't care what you say. All right. And so they sent me up to an out-of-network person, of course, who was in Syracuse. And he did the thing where they send the tube down your
throat.
throat.
Yeah.
What's going on? And he said, yeah, I need surgery. He says, I'm not sure why you have something going on there, but you definitely need surgery. So he did the surgery, and he removed what was sort of looked like a nodule from my vocal cord.
Right.
But he said when he looked at it under magnification, he
It
could
was
tell
scar
what
tissue.
happened. He said what happened was they had obviously sliced through, that the end had like curled up and balled up.
Right.
Right? And that what he took off, when you stretched it out, it was that piece that they'd cut.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said a whole piece just sliced right through. And honestly, the whole thing was so expensive, and going to Syracuse and everything else. I probably, and this happened some years ago, I should have followed it up, because at the time after my surgery, when he looked at it, because it was so long from the point I had the injury and the point that it had
Been discovered.
operated on, I had atrophy on one side of one vocal cord. I had
Oh, wow.
Now, I've always been really good at projecting, but I also have vocal training. I mean, I have degrees in computer science and music, believe it or
Right.
not. And my voice, my vocal voice, has certainly not come back.
Right. That is sad.
Which is sad.
Yes, and the thing about it is nobody takes responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I think you had a major incident, right?
Oh yeah. All this pales in comparison. So I'll start with when I was nursing my youngest son, and remember he was sick a lot. He had a weak suck. He couldn't latch on. He ended up he's got Tourette syndrome. He's got OCD. He's got some issues, but he's a great kid, and he's a really good worker. He just graduated from college, and he's going on to be a neuroscientist.
Wow.
Right now, he's trying to figure out whether he wants to go for an MD or a PhD. He's extremely bright and hardworking, and I'm very proud of him.
Right.
I am very proud of him. He is very engaged socially and politically. In fact, I guess he was out demonstrating again last night, and he's wonderful. So anyway, I was getting ill, and I didn't know why. All right, I was like getting chills and fever, and a little bit of fever, but then it'd go away. And this was going on for a couple of weeks, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on. And then in a single evening, I went from a normal temperature to 104 temperature in the space of an hour. So my husband took me to the ER, and it turned out I had mastitis, and it had abscessed.
What's that?
A mastitis is an infection of your breast when you're it happens when you're nursing.
Okay.
And it used to kill many new mothers. I mean, it's one of the major causes of maternal death
So you would get
throughout the
sepsis
century.
eventually.
Yeah, yeah. So that happened, and I mean, in this case, they took care of me right away. There was no delay. With the vocal cord, once I insisted that it be looked at, it was a year and a half before I could get in. I had to wait
Right.
that long to get
With
in
private insurance.
with private insurance.
You
This
waited a year and
business,
a half.
yes, this business that there's going to be wait times if you have Medicare for all. We already have major
Wait
wait
time.
times.
Right.
In our area, if you have to see a specialist, you're going to be waiting months. All right, you're not going to be waiting days or weeks
Right.
unless it's something really serious. So anyway, I was treated. It was very serious because it got into my blood, and they had to put me on,
Strong
uh,
antibiotics.
yeah, like right in your vein, and this went on until like half the day the next day. But I mean, I think I could have died of sepsis at this
Right.
point. So I recovered, but I kept on having trouble with that breast for a number of years afterwards, and then I for about 2.5 years, I started getting bite-a-bullet pain in the same breast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no problem with the right one, just the left one. And I mean bite a bullet. It felt literally like the alien was in my body and was eating its way out.
Right.
Um, and I didn't know what was happening. And I went to the doctor and I said, "Look, I don't know what's happening, but this is unbearable. Whatever it is, it's unbearable." Oh well, maybe. And I had just I was like in my mid 40s. I wasn't that old.
Right.
And the doctor's trying to say, "Oh, you're probably starting to go through menopause. It's probably just that kind of change. You don't need any treatment." And I'm like, I'm in a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, oh, it's nothing. When was your last mammogram, and when is your next one due? And okay, well, we'll check it then. We'll be sure to check. And this went on, like I said, for over 2.5 years. Just
Wow.
pat me on the head and say, oh, I'm sure it's not that important, and blah blah blah. So finally, I discovered what appeared to be a lump. Now, I don't. You may not know a whole lot about this, being a fella, but it turns out that women are supposed to do monthly breast
Breast
exams.
exams. Yeah, I
And
sure
by
did
the
know
way,
that. Yeah.
this may save a woman's life, and I kid you not. All right, I used to go for the mammograms and tell the woman, she'd say, "Do you do your monthly exams?" And I would say, "Why?" To find a lump. I mean, I have lumps all the time. They're cysts, right?
Right.
And she said, yes, but she said, the thing that you don't realize right now is a cancerous tumor feels completely different. And the reason you do the self-examination is that you become familiar, it's all lumpy, whatever, but it feels the same. It's okay. She said, if you ever get a lump that is cancerous and not a
You'll
cyst,
know the difference.
she said it will jump out at you like you won't believe. And she said, trust me on this and continue. So I made a practice of doing this on her word.
Right.
And so November rolls around and I find it's like, oh my goodness, this doesn't feel right. And the other thing she said was, as you go through your monthly cycle,
Mm-hmm.
it gets worse, and then you have the end of your cycle, and then it clears up, and then it gets worse the next time.
Right.
And that's normal. If it does that, then don't worry about it. It's a cyst. But if it doesn't, if it remains the same throughout your cycle, unchanging, that's what you have to worry about. So I figured, well, I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to run off and call the doctor. I'm going to go through a month and see what's happening. And I realized that it was just as she said. First of all, it jumped out at me the very first time. Second of all, it did not change. It just, it was like, it was almost like a round eraser.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? The kind of texture.
Right. I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so I called up my doctor and I said, look, I've discovered, and I went through what I had done and that how I knew it was different. And he's like, "Oh well, you're probably getting very close to menopause." This was his thing for everything. And well, you've got your mammogram is due in February, so don't worry too much. Well, I'm like, why am I waiting till February? And he says, "Well, you know something? If anything changes at all, you call me, and I will get you in right away." And so then December, January rolls around, very beginning of January, end of December. I wake up one morning with that pain, that biteable pain, and I'm clutching my breast. And I realize that, oh, there's not one, there's two.
Oh
Right?
God.
And there's a bigger one, on the side. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I called him up, and again, I get the same kind of thing. Oh, well, it's pretty close to when your mammogram is. Don't worry.
He was looking at what his cost is going to be out of
exactly,
yes.
because the insurance company, if they don't order tests, they get a bonus.
Exactly.
Also, and I didn't know any of this until
Right.
I talked with nurses afterwards. The other thing is that he's supposed to not let me get an image or whatever until the time is my yearly time, right? That was
Right.
February.
Right.
And that's why he wasn't moving forward. So the next thing is within days, I get this itching. And it was like making me crazy all on one side, and always all of this stuff always on one side. And I couldn't, this is crazy. What is going on? And then I started getting kind of a red rash that spread all over. And then my skin started turning in one place thick and leathery and pitted.
Right.
The term is
It was
peau
breaking
d'orange.
through. It was breaking through.
Yeah, and so my skin started doing that, and one part of my skin was getting thick and leathery and pitted, and on the side, it looked like rotted fruit. You know how
Right.
how it pushes.
Well, actually,
in
I've seen
and it
those things on.
darkens?
I've seen those on when you have breast cancer that isn't
Yeah.
taken care of, they
Yeah.
break out. I've seen those
Yes.
pictures.
Yes. And so I called him and I said, "Look, this is happening now. You can't tell me there isn't a problem." And he's like, "Well, I'll call them and see if I can get you in sooner." And he calls me back and he says, "No, they're all booked up. They can't get you in," which I found out later was a lie.
Yes, it's a lie. That was criminal.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I finally had a mammogram on February 14th, Valentine's Day, in 2003. And I said to the woman who was doing it, I says, "Does this look normal to you?" And I mean, she looked horrified, but they can't say anything.
Right.
So I had the mammogram, and I have this letter that they sent me. "Oh, congratulations, your tests were all normal, blah, 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 blah." And, I look like I'm about, like a piece of me is going to fall off.
Right.
And he calls me, he says, "Everything's fine." I said, "No, it's not. It's not." He said, "Well, one thing that it showed is you might have," he used some silly term like a complex cyst or something. And I said, "This is more than a complex cyst." Well, so at this point I was arguing with him, and he deigned to let me see a surgeon to get a needle biopsy. All right. Now, it's obvious I have external symptoms. I knew what it was. And I'm not a doctor. I knew what it was. And I went for this needle biopsy. The surgeon came in. He took one look at me, and I could see the look of horror on his face.
On whose face? Your doctor?
The surgeon.
The surgeon, yeah.
Surgeon. Because he's told, oh, he's got to do this needle biopsy. He comes in to do it. And he looks at me, and I mean, I could see he was just horrified. But he doesn't want to panic me. He was a very kind, very wonderful surgeon. Okay,
Right.
And so he.
But wait, let me ask you: did your doctor see the breast?
No, he didn't bother. He didn't bother. Okay. But again, it's all about what you're supposed to do. What are the protocols? All right.
For the money, yeah, exactly.
if there was nothing in the mammogram, my last mammogram, there was no reason to do anything before my next mammogram. And that's the protocol. He was strictly going by the protocol, obviously not written by any medical professional.
Right.
So the surgeon, he looks at me, he says, I'm a little concerned about this. I don't want to do a needle biopsy. I would like to do a surgical biopsy, and we're going to schedule it right away.
Wow.
Well, I mean, not right away like that day, but
Right.
right away like the next day they had that they were doing surgeries. Okay. So I got in immediately. All right. Because he knew how serious it was.
Yes.
And I knew what it was. All right. No one had to tell me. So it turns out that, and I'm being just diagnosed. All right. And he tells me afterwards, he says, well, I've got invasive ductal carcinoma of the breast. He said that it appears that it started on my chest wall. He said, fortunately, at this point, they have no evidence that it went back into my lungs. Otherwise, game over.
Right.
That it grew forward. It grew forward instead of back. And that I also had inflammatory breast cancer because it went into my dermis.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that I was stage 3B or 4 at the point of being diagnosed.
And that was because of the ineptitude of your doctor trying to satisfy the insurance protocol.
Trying to do what the insurance company wanted him to do. I investigated a bunch of things afterwards. I found out, for instance, that what he had said about not being able to get me in was not true at all. I talked to a bunch of nurses who said, when you find a lump, you have to go in immediately. She said the point of a mammogram is to find a lump before you can.
Exactly.
You find a lump.
You go in.
You don't get a mammogram. You have to be treated.
Right.
You know? And so, these nurses told me that, and I was not aware. And they said, this is because of insurance. This is because the insurance protocol says they won't do anything unless it shows up in the mammogram. I don't know if you're aware of this, because not many people
I was not.
No, but I don't know if you're aware of what I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
At that time, now I think it's improved since then, but at that time, they would tell you that about 18 to 20% of cancers were undetectable using a mammogram, about 18 to 20%. And, you were given all this stuff when you went. Now, if 18 to 20% were undetectable, why do you think that is? What is the first thing that comes into mind? That you've got this cancer, but it's not seen in the mammogram.
Maybe too small?
Yeah, isn't that whatever? I don't know anyone who has ever said anything else to me. Everyone makes that assumption. It's too small. Well, my surgeon told me, and some nurses told me, that in fact, that probably has nothing to do with it. My cancer grew in a pattern close enough to the natural pattern that it was hiding in plain sight. My surgeon said the entire breast was cancer. The entire breast.
Your entire breast was cancer?
Yes, that's what he said. And they took for the biopsy. They took and it would it grew up and out, and there were like finger-like projections.
Right.
So what they did is they took out one piece that was like the size of an olive and another piece that was smaller, and they biopsied to see what kind of cancer. There was, it was just riddled. It was just riddled, and it was in my skin.
Oh my God.
So I was immediately, so here's where you get good doctors who don't care about the insurance. Okay. But at this point I'm diagnosed, so they can do something. Before this diagnosis, they couldn't do anything. He gets me into the oncologist the following week, who sends me for a full body scan and starts me on chemo. And the thing is, and this bothered me when you talked to, I think Kathleen, was it?
Yes, Kathleen.
Was it who had the cancer?
Yes.
Was that her? Yeah, I mean, that's tragic. That doctor is criminal who's in Texas, who's doing this.
Yes.
Because the thing is, you have to be very careful with the kind of cancer and, like where it is and how it's growing and how big it is. If you just surgically remove it, all you do is you spread it and
Right.
you damn that person to a terrible death. Okay. And of course, a doctor who does that, a surgeon who is not honest, will make lots of money doing surgeries and kill all their patients. My surgeon said, and he talked with the oncologist, he said, we're not going to touch it. You need to go through chemo and it's got to be aggressive. And hopefully we'll shrink it. And then we can have some margins to work with. And then we can take it out.
So
But
the
it,
margins is to create an area that's not cancerous. It's more than likely cauterized, and you can
yeah.
cut around.
Right. So what had happened, and I'm just so fortunate, because inflammatory breast cancer, when I was diagnosed, the 5-year survival rate was something between 2 and 3%.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a death sentence. And I know, because of everything I read, that I was going to live maybe 6 months. If on the outset, it would be 18 months, and it was going to be truly horrible. And that's the way it was back then. But the week before, the FDA approved a new regimen. My oncologist was at a conference where they went over it, and it was a super aggressive form of treatment. And the thing is, prior to all this, they couldn't do anything more aggressive because you'd get the chemo and it would trash
The rest of your body.
Well, it would trash your bone marrow.
Yeah.
And you'd have no red cells, no white cells, you'd die. Okay. But see, now they have things like Neupogen, they have Procrit, forces your body to produce even when it's all destroyed.
Right.
And so they gave me what's called a dose density regimen. I had 2 different formulas over periods of months. And it was effective, which was amazing because, I mean, this is something that would have been a death sentence.
Yeah, and that is over 15 years ago.
Totally amazing. So they were able to shrink it. Then I went for surgery, and then I went for radiation. Now, none of this stuff was without cost. The radiation destroyed my thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
The surgery, I had about a third of my musculature removed or harvested for the surgery and the reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
And that affects a lot of things. I don't know if I mentioned, but during the surgery, they, how they take out the lymph nodes and they examine them. 3 of my lymph nodes were so involved that they had burst the capsule.
Oh, God. So that could have spread as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it had spread to my skin, but fortunately, the chemo and the surgery, they got everything apparently.
Right.
And then I went on adjuvant treatment, not the usual, more stronger, because it was like I probably wasn't going to live. And I was on that for 5 years. And after about 6 months, I was throwing up and having all kinds of digestive symptoms for the whole of that 5 years. And then it took about 2 years to get my liver enzymes down back, they were very high, and it took over 2 years until they came back to normal. So I was very sick.
Right.
For like 7 years after this ordeal. And then sometime after that, the Taxol, which is one of the
I know about that.
chemo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of peripheral nerve damage from that, and I started losing my balance, so I have issues with that. And now in the last couple of years, I've developed an autoimmune disease and an immune deficiency. I've gotten mononucleosis 5 times in the last year and a half. And they suspect, because I'm not the only cancer patient who had aggressive treatment who is having issues with this.
But interestingly, a lot of this came to pass because of our private health insurance system.
Yes, all of this
was the genesis of your issues.
Exactly. Years and years of this nonsense and all the extra cost.
Exactly. Now, how are you doing now, Rose?
Well, I mean, I had to go on medical leave last semester. I was so ill. When the autoimmune disease I have kicks in, I can't walk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extraordinarily painful. We got it under control. I'm
Now,
sorry.
now tell me, we are one of the things that you're advocate for. This even increased your passion for Medicare for all. Explain to me what you think Medicare for all would mean, both for people who are have your situation and otherwise.
Yeah, well, the first thing that became so clear to me is, I mean, I am not unintelligent and I'm educated. You know, there's a lot of women who maybe don't have my level of education, and they're going up against these doctors and the insurance companies, and I think it's just tragic. And also, the American Cancer Society is not telling them the truth as far as mammograms.
Hmm.
That is, I think, uh, fraudulent, just fraudulent. But you know, I just feel like insurance companies, they set up these protocols. You have to jump through these ridiculous hoops. Has nothing to do with true knowledge of medicine. I mean, certainly every nurse I spoke to, because you know, then I was going to the breast center and all this other stuff, and they're like, you know, this is just not the proper way to treat this. And the problem is that this is something that is epidemic now in women. It used to be maybe 1 in 50 women, and now it's like 1 in 7 or 8.
Hmm.
I can tell you that of my friends that I went to high school with, had this kind of little clutch of 6 friends. Well, there were 6 of us. 3 of us have had breast cancer.
Wow.
One has had cancer and died. So that's
Wow.
4 people, 4 out of 6, 4 out of 6.
I've had breast cancer.
Well, have had. I'm actually not sure what the cancer was that Marilyn had, but she had cancer, and then the 3 of us, we had breast cancer. We're still here.
Now,
But mine was discovered very late.
now this is your condition is something that can, will likely happen to quite a few people.
Yes.
Medicare for all is really, tell us why Medicare for all is something that we need to be passionate about supporting,
Well, first
specifically.
of all, I think it's going to promote truthfulness, right? So we won't have doctors trying to fool people into saying silly things that I mean, like, oh, you're approaching menopause. What nonsense! Um, and telling women the truth and having women be able to go and get treatment, and perhaps be able to speak to nurses who know and will tell them the truth and get treatment early when it's not such a big deal anymore. If you get treatment late, you know, you're toast. You're just toast. Or you survive like I did with years of suffering, years of illness, and then, you know, I'm going to have this the rest of my life, just constant illness. I'm at risk for lymphoma now. I'm at risk for what do they call it? Chronic active Epstein-Barr virus.
Hmm.
And I had planned to work until I was 70. And now I'm just trying to make it to my retirement age, which, you know, is no longer 65, but at least, you know, I'm 65. But
Hmm.
next year I could retire. And I love teaching. I love working with students, and I'm just not going to be able to do that.
Well, let me tell you, Rose, I have you submitted a document, a Medicare for All document that urges people, gives a whole lot of reasons why Medicare is essential. We spoke a whole lot about your medical conditions here,
Yeah.
which I think is
But
the
but can I say something?
yes,
I had supposedly good insurance.
right,
I have supposedly a good job. Okay. Many people do not. And this nonsense of using insurance, it it guarantees that there's going to be at least 2 or 3 lanes with healthcare in our country. There's going to be the wealthy who can get anything. There's going to be people in my situation who have, you know, what we call decent insurance, what we call a decent salary, etc. That okay, we may get diagnosed late, but you know, we survive. And then there's going to be those who just don't. You know, basically the people that the insurance companies don't care about. Uh,
right.
those who are poor. We have so many homeless in this country. Um, we have minorities who aren't getting a fair shake. It's all this inequality and unfairness, and it's unacceptable in a country like this. It's just unacceptable. Why do we allow it?
Well, I mean, that's the reason why I wanted to have you telling your stories, because stories are better than anything else. Because within your story, people can actually see what their life could be, what can happen to them. Now, what
Yeah.
I'm going to do is that document that you prepared with your son, excellent document, along with this video telling your stories. We're going to make that a part of this particular post. But
Great.
this is wonderful. I am happy that you're okay, and I'm happy that you're a big supporter of Medicare for All, because we need people like you out there telling their stories, not suffering in silence, so that others will come out as well. So,
Yeah.
Rose.
If it happened to me, there's so many other women who are suffering even more, even
Abs-
more.
Absolutely. Rose Williams, lecturer at Binghamton University and Medicare for All advocate. Thank you so kindly for spending your time with us, and
Thank you.
we'll do this again.
Yes, we're going to do whatever it takes.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Rose.
Okay, take care.
Folks, I hope you appreciated that. We're running a little bit late on this right now, so I need to go real quickly. Please support Politics Done Right. It is essential that we do this to keep giving you the true information, as opposed to what you're getting on mainstream media, which is only there to protect the plutocracy. You want to help us? Go ahead and please purchase at our site, store.politicsdoneright.com. You can get our t-shirts, mugs, all those kinds of things. As you purchase these products, you're also supporting us. We'd love for you to become subscribers to Politics Done Right. How do you become a subscriber of Politics Done Right? You simply go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politics done right. Become a subscriber. It's very inexpensive. You actually are doing positive work for our cause. You can also support our equipment fund by going to gofundme.com/independent-media-upgrade. Again, that is gofundme.com/independent-media-upgrade. You can always provide us a contribution through our PayPal address, which is paypal.me/politics done right. Again, that is paypal.me/politics done right. And again, please go to our store. We had an issue with our store where they were only shipping with FedEx. We've instituted regular USPS, which makes the prices of shipment a lot less expensive. We got some complaints about that, so that was instituted just yesterday. So visit our store.politicsdoneright.com. It's there on the screen as well, folks. The only way we are going to get things done, the only way we are going to be sure that we are going to change this country, is to ensure that going forward, we don't listen to the plutocrats that own the TV stations, that owned our airwaves, but that we, those of us who can give you an independent message, can be funded in such a manner that we can come out and tell you the truth. We are telling your stories. Those of you who have stories, I've asked you to go to info@politicsdoneright.com and tell me your story. Write to me about your story, just like Rose did, and just like Rose we gave Rose an airing on Politics Done Right. We want to do the same for you. This show belongs to you. This is your show. This is for us to make a better body politic. So I ask you so kindly again, please become a subscriber to Politics Done Right. Please become a funder of Politics Done Right. Please shop at our store and find something. If there's something that you want with a logo, or that you want with our logo, tell us, and we'll try our best, our absolute best, to oblige. I hope you enjoyed the program. For those of you who are coming to the program late, remember that you can always go back and see it, and we process it as well to make sure that we have a version on YouTube that is easily accessible. Thank you so kindly for being here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this beautiful baby. I am what? Out!